Hello. Hello, good evening. Hello.
Much better. Hello.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I was having such a hard time getting my my microphone to work.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fixed now, I'm sure.
Yes,
That's
better
good.
now.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening, Lisa. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad. You know, I don't see my picture and hear at all. Can you guys see me?
I can
Yeah.
see you.
You can see me?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be muting myself when I start. Right? Because I don't think my picture is showing up very well tonight because it's dark, right? It's nighttime. So I'm going to be starting pretty soon here.
Okay.
Pierre, are you here? Here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. You're letting everyone in, right? You still have
Yes.
that function?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so there's 38 people, which is pretty good. And I think we should get rolling, right?
Sounds good.
There's Wendy again. Okay, so do you want to introduce me or?
Yes, let me say, I guess I'll just go from the heart. So Jean, I've known Jean. Jean Garraway is, I guess, currently a mortgage broker, but she's had a varied career within the financial industry. I've met Jean as the branch manager of RBC in the Oshawa region when I was a financial advisor for the Durham region with RBC. So Jean is generous individual, married with three children. Am I?
3 children, that's correct.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. I still remember as I'm getting older. Generous in terms of giving back to the community. I know in my practice as a independent financial advisor, she's helped me tremendously with regards to hard to place mortgages, helping young families find their first home, having individuals that having personal financial issues, by refinancing their mortgage to give them a better leg up in the future. So Jean is a spiritual family person and an educator, as you'll see tonight. So she's got a BA from York University. She's been working various management roles since 1982. She's too young to have retired from 2018. So that makes you what, 25 right now? 25
Absolutely.
US, yeah. And now she's with Dominion Lending, and as I said before, her mission is to help her clients find suitable mortgage solutions with lower brokerage fees. So take it away, Jean.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pierre. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to FinTalk. That is my new name for what I'm doing now in the advisory field. So tonight we will be talking about shared ownership. My intention is to show you how you can join forces to enter the real estate market. Now, I'd like to encourage everyone to leave their questions until the end of the night, because we really don't want to be on until midnight, right? So in that way, we can, chat a lot at the end of the session, because we do have quite a stacked deck tonight. So before I continue, I'm going to be muting myself so that you can absolutely pay attention to what I'm saying and not what I look like, right? So you will be letting people in as I go up here, but here is my business card. I work for Dominion Lending, as Pierre said. And if you go on my Facebook page, you can always click on my profile and there is my business card, okay? Now, tonight, we're gonna really get to the nitty-gritty of shared ownership. Now, shared ownership is not a new concept, right? It is a concept that has made many people from other communities very wealthy. And we don't have to ask any questions about what community that is, right? The South Asian community has done very well sharing their homes with each other, right? I remembered in the 90s, one of my staff was a East Asian, a lovely lady, and she introduced me to the whole concept. I didn't even know that's how they did it. She said, Jean, the way we do it is we all get together, we buy the first house, and we all live in the first house. And after about 5 years, we all own our own. They set up a whole system of how this shared ownership will work with them. So many people in our community do not like the thought of sharing a property, right? In banking over the years, I've always tried to encourage the younger ones to share ownership, join forces with someone else and buy a home. And I will tell you that when it comes to the Black individuals in our community, a good 70% of them will say, no, it's not going to happen. But I totally get it. If you do not want to share a property with someone, how about sharing a rental property? You won't be living together, right? But you can put your heart and soul into sharing and qualifying for that home together, and you won't regret it. So some of us, because of that, have missed the opportunity of a lifetime because of this fear, okay? So let's look at this example. If you purchase a home in 2002 in Ajax, Ontario, around that time, you would have paid about $300,000 for a home, right? It is now worth $1.3 million. That's a $1 million increase over 20 years, right? Now, last February, that same house that is worth 1.3 was worth 1.8, right? So if two people had purchased that property jointly, they would have at least $500,000 cash, tax-free, if they sold today. That's amazing, right? So based on all these facts, real estate is the most stable investment over the long term. It never, ever disappoints. I can tell you that, right? So here are 5 reasons why you should consider shared ownership. It's easier to qualify for a mortgage, right? Let me just move Pierre's picture out of the way here. Yeah, it's easier to qualify for a mortgage. Of course, 2 incomes is always better than 1. It reduces the amount of money needed per person, correct? That's a no-brainer. Now, the person with the higher credit score can help the co-borrower that has a lower credit score. Lenders now are looking for 680 and above. Some will take 650, but you're looking at 680 and above. And suppose a person wants to buy a house and their score is 654, right? Most lenders will go, no, can't, especially if you're putting 5% down. They want very strong credit. They want to know that you can afford this. So if you bring in a sister, you bring in a friend, you bring in an aunt, and they have 720, all of a sudden, yes, we can use that person as the borrower that would help out in the situation, and you can go right ahead. It also gives you access to home ownership, where you can pay yourself first versus a landlord. No one wants to pay a landlord $2,500 a month for a 1-bedroom condo when you can have your own place, right? And last but not least, it builds a legacy for future generation. Too many of us now are not leaving a legacy for our children. We really have to change that. We must prepare for our children in the future. Now, to qualify for a home purchase of, say, 1.1 million, which is the average in most cities in GTA, you will need an income in excess of $200,000. I can't tell you how many times my clients would come to me for pre-approval and they make good money. And, I have to let them down in a nice way, of course, but you will need about $200,000. And people in our Facebook group, the Real Estate Facebook group, will know that because we talk about that all the time. It is quite a shock to the system. So over the last 2 years, many purchasers have been priced out of the market. Interest rates have escalated rapidly, and even with the downward trend in house prices, it is still a struggle to qualify, right? The government has done certain things to slow down inflation, and some people think the government is going to do things to, create monetary and fiscal policy to help us buy a house. It is not going to happen, guys, because what they're doing to slow down inflation is increasing interest rates. And is that making anything better for us? Absolutely not. It makes it tougher. So we have to look at other options. So because of this, many buyers are looking outside of major urban centers. A lot of people are going to Hamilton, they're going to Windsor, London, Ottawa, Montreal. They're even going out of the province. They're going to Alberta, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and even out of the country, Florida, right? So at this point, before we get into the real meat and gravy of joint ownership, I would like to just discuss the 3 lending markets that we have, because a lot of people buy homes and they're not aware of the market they should belong to. Some people are in markets they shouldn't be and are paying way more money, and they're not aware of what their options are. And that's my job here tonight, is to educate. So we have the A, the B, and the C market. So in the A market, the lender has the strictest rules. We're looking at the banks, the 5 major chartered banks, and even some monolines. We're going to discuss what monolines is later. You're looking at places like monoline, places such as First National, Manulife, MCAP, B2B, right? Now, an A lender has the strictest lending rules. Their ratios are very low, so you need more income to qualify with the RBCs, the TDs, and the Scotias, right? CIBC, BMOs. You need top-notch credit scores, especially if you are buying with 5% down. Sometimes you may get away with 650. Scotia is really good in the broker arm with 650, but 680 and above is what they're looking at right now. So you need higher incomes to qualify. And one thing I have to, ensure you guys understand, there is never any broker or lender fees for this type of mortgage. A lot of people feel if you go to the broker market, you're going to pay fees. And I understand, because when I was in the bank, I used to train my staff, just tell them you're going to pay fees. And really, it isn't true, right? You do not pay fees if you are if you have an A profile with good credit, good income, you do not pay fees. So let's move over to the B lender. Now, this is a market that has helped a lot of people over the years to get into the housing market. If it wasn't for the B lender, like Community Trust, Haven Tree, and those guys, a lot of people in our community would not own houses because, in our community, it is a struggle. It's a struggle, my friends. So the B lender has way less stringent rules, right? So the credit can be tarnished and the scores can be lower. I've seen clients come in with 500 credit scores and they're able to get a mortgage, just that they have to have 20% down, right? So the buyers can usually buy at a higher price in this market. There is usually a lender fee though, around 1% for a first mortgage, and then you have broker fees to go with it. So you have to be careful, what broker or mortgage agent you use, because that is not written in stone. Whereas I could go to Community Trust and I know that the lender fee is 1% for a first mortgage. It's not the same in the broker industry. There are times, when clients would come to me and they've had such a rough time in the past with brokers. And I would say, they say, what's your fee, Jean? And I say, well, for you, I charge 0.5%. I'm kind of retired. I don't really care. And they would go, hell no, I don't believe you. Right? So until they see the form that says 0.5%, they don't believe. But that's something you have to shop around and always ask your broker, what are you charging me? Don't wait until you get to the lawyer's office to find out what this is, because a lot of people increase their mortgage balance because of these horrendous fees that are being charged out there. I don't want to knock too many people, but we have to do a little better here. So some clients are in the B market because of credit issues, not because of their debt load, not because it's high. So you can save a lot by just being in the A market and really pay attention to your credit scores, guys, to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. Now, let's look at the private market. That's what I call the C market. There is no focus on credit scores, income, or debt ratios. Anybody can get anything pretty much. And that's why you pay more in this market. Remember, these lenders, these private lenders are lending you their own money. It's their business, and that is what some of us in this group can also do. Become a lender, in this market. You can do it. I'll have a session on how to do that. In this market, you need 20% down payment, right? That is usually what you need for purchases, but there are some lenders who will let you in for 10%, and there are lenders too who will let you in at 0. I don't get involved in that, but it happens. Now, many hardships are caused due to lending and borrowing in this market. Whenever I slow down, I want you to really listen to this, guys, okay? Many B clients are in this market when they should not be. They don't know. They're, renewing their mortgage every year, paying these horrendous fees, wearing down their equity, not knowing that they can do better, right? Spending too much time in this C space, in the private space, could reduce the equity in your home in short order. You don't have to wait 10 years for this to happen. You must have an exit strategy. You must prepare yourself to get out of the private mortgage market, or else you will regret it. And last but not least, if you purchase a home in the private C market with declining real estate prices and increasing interest rates, you are at risk of losing your home. I've seen a lot. It's happening to a lot of people who have bought homes over the last year or two. Okay, you really have to look at your options. Now, remember I talked about monoline banks? Monoline lenders are, like I said, the First Nationals, the Manulife, B2B, MCAP. For our company, it would be Paradigm Quest that does a lot of lending for different mortgage brokerage houses. Now, the mortgage penalties are way lower with monoline lenders. A lot of people don't know this, right? Try having a mortgage at a bank and try to close out your mortgage. You know, something happens, you know, emergencies happen all the time. Try to close out your mortgage and paying a penalty in the first couple of years. Oh my goodness, right? The penalties are so severe. I remember a client coming to me once and he was early into his 5-year term. He wanted to cash out and I think he had some funeral or something and he wanted to, you know, consolidate some debts. He was paying a $33,000 penalty. And I pulled up a calculator. I think it was either for First National or Manulife, and I put in the same information, and the penalty was $16,000. That's a big difference, guys. And that's what you're looking at, right? Now, I don't want to knock the banks because, hey, that's where I'm getting my pension from right now. I used to work at RBC, right? And the banks do have some good, you know, good features and benefits. For example, if you have a mortgage at RBC, right? And I know RBC, I worked at all of them, but I know RBC the most. If you have a mortgage at RBC and you have 40%, you know, more than 20% equity in your home, you can change that mortgage into a home line, a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. They call it a home line there with no qualifications. You can just do it, pay $70 to register, and you have a home line. Now, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people at RBC don't even know that, but it's called moving your mortgage in kind. So banks do have some really good features and benefits as well, right? Now, when it comes to the monolines though, the monolines, not all monoline mortgages are fee-based, just like I told you, the ones in the A market, right? You don't pay any fees. Monoline lenders offers way more flexibility and creativity for people who need creative financing. Ask the small business guy about a monoline bank versus a bank. Banks are just not there when it comes to financing for small businesses because they use their net income, and a small business will never get a mortgage with the bank if they're writing off a lot of their income. Whereas a monoline bank like a B lender, they will look at the money you're depositing to your checking account, and that's what they use as your income, not your net income. So there's more flexibility. And last but not least, with a monoline, usually they offer better rates than the bank because their overhead costs are lower. They don't have a branch on every corner like the banks do, okay? So that is, I just wanted to go over you know, the difference between the banks, the monolines, and the 3 different markets that we have out there that you will get financing in. Now, one more thing before we go into co-ownership. A mortgage in the B market costs more money. I want you to pay attention to this, guys, because a lot of people are so happy to get a mortgage in the B market, and they, you know they're paying more, but you pay on the average of 2 to 2.5% more in interest rates. That is costly. So let's look at some examples, right? A $500,000 mortgage at 4.79% right now, say a first-time home buyer, will cost the client $111,794 in interest in the first 5 years, and they're paying bi-weekly, okay? You only pay down in that scenario $30,000 on your principal. Isn't that amazing? See how much money the banks make? Now, when you look at a client who has a B market in that B space at 6.79, it will cost a client $162,307 in interest over 5 years. You will pay down $58,000 of your principal, but you are paying so much more, $50,000 more in interest over 5 years. I want you to really think about that the next time you think of buying a property, right? And you know, sometimes the reason is because a client declared bankruptcy. They got bad advice. They went into a bankruptcy lawyer's office and they say, oh, you know what, you should just declare bankruptcy. They only owe $6,000. So can you imagine? The client has paid 50 grand for a $6,000 bankruptcy. And a lot of times they regret it. You know, it's not something that they wanted to do. So it's really good. You know, I can see Pierre going, oh my God, $50,000. What are the missed opportunities here, right? You know what we can do with $50,000 for children's RESP, for RSP contribution, TFSAs? Amazing. Buying insurance, which most of us, you know, usually do not buy. We can really protect our assets with this $50,000. So it's good to do some credit review 6 to 12 months before you literally buy a house. A lot of people are coming to you 30 days before they buy. No, no, no. You should start 6 months to take a look at everything, because a lot of times we can help clients fix their blemish credit before they buy. Okay, all right. So let's talk about the good stuff. Joint ownership. It has its advantages, right? So let's take a look at a property in Windsor. Now, on our real estate group, Nikki Llewellyn posted this house, and I thought this house was really interesting. It was listed for $530,000. It's a 5-bedroom. It has a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit and a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit in the basement, I think. Now, there's also potential for 3 units, right? You can split this 4-bedroom into 2-bedroom units, right? So let's look further into this. There are benefits to buying out in Windsor for sure. Let's say you bought this house for $520,000. Let's compare a single buyer to joint buyers, 2 buyers. Now, as you can see, the single buyer will have to come up with $34,800. Now, the good thing is you're buying for $520,000, not $1.1 in GTA, right? So that's the good thing. Now, the bad thing is you're going to need about $160,000 to qualify for this house. And, you know, there are certain assumptions that I have to make for taxes, for heating, for, you know, total amount of debt load, you know, the amount of monthly bills that you have. And that's what you're looking for when, you know, a single buyer is purchasing a property. Now, suppose 2 buyers come into the mix, first-time home buyers. You're looking at half the amount, $17,000 instead of $35,000. You need $80,000 income. So the income requirement is still high, but it's not nearly anywhere if you are buying it on your own. So clearly, it is cheaper to pool your funds to buy a home, right? Now, I know at this time, some people are looking at the screen and they're going, well, what are my options if I have limited cash and low income? I don't make $80,000. What do I do, right? That is the beauty of shared ownership, right? More people in the house. Now let's look at 4 buyers. You need $8,700. All of a sudden, this looks a little better, doesn't it? You need $40,000 in income, and more than likely, the average person can now see themselves as home buyer if they're only willing to share. Now, I know it's tough, can't live with everybody, right? But it can be done. It's done in other communities, right? And you don't have to do it for life, right? That's the good thing about it. Now, I just want to throw in this information here. Suppose you bought a house, this house, and you have renters in the basement. Say you have 4 students, right? paying you $2,800. Your mortgage is 31. Look at what your carrying cost would be, all in $357. Where can you find that in GTA? Never. Carrying costs are much lower in Windsor if you can somehow get a job out there or remotely work out there, right? So this rented basement could be more valuable than even a co-owner. There are options, guys. So clearly, joint ownership is cheaper, and having a rental component is also very beneficial. Now, let's talk about shared housing. It has its benefits, right? Here are some options. Now, a lot of people do not care to move back home with their parents because some people have parents from hell. Some people have parents that are great, right? So you could move back home and share your home with your parents and save some money. The mistake that most people do when they leave, when they graduate from college or university is, say, take for example, a nurse. You have very high student loan. You go out and you get this fancy apartment downtown paying $3,000 a month, and you buy the most expensive car. Then you look for a mortgage pre-approval and you're dismayed because it's just not going to work, right? You really have to know what you're doing if your intention is to own real estate. Now, here's another concept. Invest in your parents' basement. When I mentioned that to people, they laugh and go, what do you mean invest in my parents' basement, right? I met a young chap once who came to me when I was at RBC in Oshawa. And he said he just graduated and he wanted to come in and start a savings, plan. And I asked him, about, tell me about your parents. He says, well, they're both professionals. They're doing well. They don't even they don't even have a mortgage. So I said, well, why move out? Why not invest in your parents' basement? He says, well, what do you mean? I said, talk to your parents, borrow some money, finish the basement, and you either live there instead of going downtown and paying $2,200 a month, or you rent the basement. That could be like your side gig, right? He says, my parents would probably go for that because they don't really care, right? And he did. And at that time, prime was really, I think it was like 3.5%. It was so cheap. He was paying $650 a month in interest. That's all. And he lived there for a while, but after a while, he rented it for $1,650 a month, and all that extra money was his. So he had options. He could either pay off the parents' loans, right? He could leave it, pay interest, and take the difference between that and the $1,650 and invest it. Options, that's what that's all about, okay? Now, the next option is you can buy a home that you can convert. There is something called purchase plus improvement that a lot of us do not use. A lot of us don't even know about. You can buy a home, renovate it, build a, second unit on, you can finish the basement, anything to create extra cash, right? And the banks will give you the money if you qualify. If you buy a house for say $500,000 and the improvements is $100,000, you can get a mortgage if you qualify for $600,000. There's only one catch to this. You have to have that $100,000. So, you can use the bank of mom and dad for a temporary, period of time. Once the renovation is completed, right, the bank will give you that money. And there you have a place where you can get extra income, whether it be rental income or, whatever the case may be. You can also invest in an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, a garden home, a laneway home, that's what they call it. In Toronto, it's legal. My daughter was living downtown and her neighbor next door built an ADU for $300,000 and rented it for $3,000 per month. It was a no-brainer. A lot of people are going to be looking at that, so if you're looking to buy a home or a rental or anything in Toronto, you should look for a property with enough ample space in the back that you can build an ADU later on, because that could be your retirement income, right? The other thing that you can do when you buy a property is you can add on to an existing home. I once had a client who bought a flat roof property in Oshawa. And he says, Jean, I just want some extra money. I'm going to put an extra, a second story, because what was happening in Oshawa at the time, UOIT was coming in, and there was this great need for student housing. So he borrowed the money, put on an extra layer on top, and he is doing phenomenal. This is what an ADU looks like. It's great. If I had a house in front there, I'd definitely do that. I'll put it in. Look at that. 2-car garages, even a little space at the side there for a third car. So these are things that you can do, guys. There are opportunities out there. Is it easy to do it on your own? Maybe not. But this is why we're talking about shared ownership tonight, co-ownership. Okay? So many people are afraid to invest outside of their geographic region. The other day, 3 people called me, wanted to do pre-approval. And they were great kids, and they, hardly qualified for what they were looking for. And I said, why don't you consider Alberta? And they cringed. There are fears, that people are just afraid of the unknown. They don't know people in the area. They're not familiar with the area. Those are the excuses that I get sometimes, but they are just not aware of the role of a property manager. You don't need to live where you're buying. No, right? So here are things that you can consider. Talk to people who are investors. In our Facebook group, the real estate group, there are many people in that group that has properties, right? I am sure that many of them would love to take a half an hour and talk to you about their experiences in buying investment properties, right? Research the location. If you go on to realtor.ca, realtor.com, you can look at a location and tell whether there's a hospital close, there's schools in the area, supermarkets, hospital, is it close to a highway? You can find out all those things if you just go to Google Maps, right? I mean, I bought a house in Florida, and the first one I went down for the weekend, I looked at it, I loved it, I bought it in 2012. The second one I bought, I never went. I looked at the map, I saw Walmart was closed, Publix was closed, the highway I-95 is closed, everything you can think of. Baseball arena is right down the road, PGA golf is right up the road. What am I waiting for? I put in an offer, I bought the house, and I've never had a problem renting it, because it's all about location, location, location. And I've talked to many people, advised many people on how to buy houses down here. You just need a mentor. That's all you need. Find a mentor and ask questions and educate yourself. Now, let's take a flight to Alberta. Now, I didn't just choose this condo because it looks good and the price is right? I'm still working with the individual that says, Jean, how about me? I don't make a lot of money and I don't have a lot of money to pay down on a property in GTA, right? So we have Windsor, right? Which we're going to talk about next. And we have Edmonton. Now look at this house. This condo. I lived in this area in the 80s, and I know it's a good area. It's not the most expensive area, but it's pretty decent. On Hindman Road, you can find a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom for $125,000, guys. Look at it. It doesn't look like a ghetto. $125,000. So I crunched the numbers. It will cost you $1,250, and you can collect rents of $1,450. You have an immediate cash flow. You put down 20%, and you have a cash flow of $200. You just want to get in, right? And one person can buy this, 2 people can buy this, whatever. Just get in there. You can get a property manager to look after your property. You can write all that off on your tax return. It's a good deal. Okay, now let's go to Florida. West Palm Beach, everybody knows that place. Here is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, list price $115,000. It's US, but by the time you do the, the conversion, you're still sitting on a good deal. Now, these properties are unique. They're called the 55 and over properties. You have to have at least one person 55 and over to participate in this purchase. So you have an aunt, you have a mom who wants to spend some time in Florida. Why not join in with him, buy a property, and when you crunch the numbers for you, it costs $1,162 all in. Rent $1,400, and that is cheap. Trust me. I have a friend who has a property in Sarasota, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, $6,400 US. Fantastic income. Look at the opportunities. Positive cash flow right here and then. So I've given you some ideas. There's Windsor, there's Alberta, there's Florida, and now we're going to talk to a sister who's in our group who's going to shine some light on the opportunities that exist in Windsor. Now, the other day I posted this on Facebook and everybody applauded. A strip mall with all Black women-owned brands just opened in Washington, D.C. Hooray! Awesome. Guys, we can do this too. So at this point, I'd love to introduce you to this beautiful sister here, Nikki Llewellyn, who posts on our page often. And I hope Nikki is around. Nikki?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. You're on stage, hon.
Thank you.
You let me know when you want me to move the slide ahead, okay?
Okay, got you. Hi, guys. It's a pleasure getting a chance to talk to everybody. Jean, you did an amazing job. I mean, what you said, I couldn't say it any better. So you're kind
Thank you.
follow up on right now. But it's really important for us to learn and understand the financial part of owning a home because, a lot of people are afraid, like you said, of making certain decisions because they don't really know, they're not really knowledgeable. And you really shed some, or I even covered some really good points on how we can invest and how we can actually make it happen. Because why is it so important to own a home? Why do we want to go through all of those steps that you mentioned? Is because having a property and owning a property would help you grow your capacity. It helps you, number one, it helps you grow your credit capacity. If you want to purchase and you can't get in, having an opportunity to join with other people and having your name on a home would allow banks moving forward to see you in a different light and give you that opportunity when you're ready to move forward. So even if it might be something small, even if you're saying, hey, you know what, I can't make much off of, sharing with a bunch of people, and you might see there's no point to it, but there is. It's very important for you to have your name on something to show that you have the ability to buy, make your bill payments, and have and own a property. So that is, a lot of good points that you covered. Now I wanted to, I am an Ontario realtor. I do live in Windsor, Ontario. And what I see here has been a boom over the last 2 years in real estate. A lot of people kind of shy away from going far. I see some people say to me, oh my gosh, Windsor, why? That's so far, it's 4 hours and it sounds crazy. But the reason why Windsor is because when you look at all of Ontario, we understand that Ontario alone holds the majority population in Canada, almost, pretty much. So there's so much room to grow just in this one province, right? And everyone seems to be stuck in GTA, but a lot of people are beginning to stretch out and move in other places. And it's not just people doing that. The government is actually making room in other places for that exodus out of GTA so that it's not as concentrated. So you look at certain cities in Ontario and see where the developments are happening so that you're able to get a jump on before the price tag starts going up on that area, and you're able to invest in that in an area that is on the rise, that is affordable. So as many of you may not know, Windsor is, I believe, the second, she might even be the first. I know it's the first for like a major city, but it's the second most affordable place to live in Ontario. The thing is that Windsor is actually one of those underdog towns, like I would say, because it has a lot more than a lot of the other cities and surrounding areas have to offer. GTA does have its airport. I think they have that 2 airports, 2 international airports, and you have access to all those highways. The thing is that Windsor does too. So you have access to Windsor Airport, you have access to Detroit's International Airport, you have access to all those highways. I think the 75 and the 96, which is an interstate highway, and you have the 401 right here. So it's kind of one of those sleeper towns that is starting to gain a lot of attention and gain a lot of traction. So I've heard Jean mention in the past that you should invest in potential. When you're looking to invest in somewhere, it's very important to look in hindsight, like what would you say, what would you see as key indicators of a city that's up and coming, right? When you look at Windsor and you see, okay, the property values literally shot up like significantly. When I first came here, I think you can get a house for 199, 200,000. I think back then I was even posting, hey, look, 199 houses, guys. Believe me, they were fixer uppers. You did have to put money into them. You know, it did come with that, but where are you really going to get that? Where you're not in boony town, you're not stuck in the middle of nowhere, right? So now, no, the medium price, house price right now, I think is like 614,000, which is amazing. But it's still significantly lower than the other major cities in Ontario. So the topics, I'm going to kind of touch back on that a little bit later.
Let me know when you want to go ahead on the screens.
Go ahead. I do actually want to discuss some of the topics that you were kind of touching on, but I want to give other versions of how we can like own a property, how we can break it down in a way that's affordable. Because this market, the problem with the good side of this market is housing is cheaper. It's cheaper than it has been in the last year or two since COVID. The prices have gone down. The problem is that a lot of people don't want to buy because the carrying costs are so high. Okay, so how do you get a chance to take advantage of a market, take advantage of this market where you can buy a property at a low cost, but you still can handle the carrying costs, which you've covered some of that, which was co-ownership. You own with other people. Some other topics that so another angle we have to look at, I want to start by talking about primary residence versus investment property. Okay, then we'll discuss short-term versus long-term rentals as if you're going to be using that property as an investment. And then we'll look at residential versus commercial investments. And then we'll look at choosing the right location. Well, we'll kind of touch back on that subject I was discussing earlier. So we can go to the next slide. So let's kind of zoom this in a little bit. So I decided to pick this house. You did discuss a laneway house in Ontario. They did start the new law that you're allowed to have an ADU on your property. Windsor actually has been doing this. Windsor has actually been doing this for quite some time. They did have this, so you can purchase a property that has another house on it or like another dwelling unit on the property. An additional dwelling unit doesn't have to necessarily be another building. It could even just be your basement apartment, okay? But it just means you're taking a single family home on your property and changing it into a multiple family property, okay? So in this scenario that I have here, this is like a house with an ADU, which is there's 2 houses on this one property. So this property is right in front of Riverside, where it has a beautiful view of Detroit. But the reason why I brought this one up is because this would give you an interesting way of getting into the market. Let's say you are one person that wants to buy this house, okay? If you get a mortgage from the mortgage standpoint, or ownership standpoint, that would be like a fee simple if you're going to be getting this house on your own. So one buyer, your initial investment would be like $46,200. Then you would get a mortgage of, I believe, your mortgage, your taxes on this, you're going to be paying by yourself $5,250. All right. Your mortgage payments for the year, which is called your debt service, that's what your monthly, what altogether for the year you'd be paying in mortgage payments. You're looking at $58,872. Okay. And that would be minus your mortgage insurance, because this is based on if you put 5% down. All right. So if you put 5% down as first time home buyer, we add the extra 4% for mortgage insurance to that amount. You're looking at about $58,000, like I said, $872 you're going to be paying for that. And then you have your taxes, your maintenance, and your insurance, all of those. So your carrying cost alone is $6,160. That's not including, obviously, your other fees that you have, like your utilities and whatnot. But if you were to buy this property with someone else, you can live in one unit, the other person can live in another unit, and you guys can both be owners of this property and keep your carrying costs. We're not saying this is forever. This is to get you into the market, get you into home ownership, and we can kind of entertain some of those ideas that Jean was talking about, like the other communities do, where we all stay on the same property, we pay down the mortgage, we get that down. Once your mortgage is down, once you're able to either refinance or get some equity out, the second person can take that money that they, the equity out of it, and then buy another property. First person can either keep that property or sell it, rent out the other unit, however they want to do it. So if you have 2 owners in this house, you guys both can live in the property, or you can choose to rent out your unit, Airbnb your specific unit, your house, generate income from your house if you don't wish to live in it. But this way, you're into the market, you're paying half of the cost. So your initial investment now is $23,000. That's a little bit more attainable for somebody. And if you still have the same carrying costs, but all of your costs are going to be shared. So now your carrying costs monthly, instead of $6,000 for a $770,000 house, you're paying $3,000, right? So
Is this the screen you wanted? I don't know.
No,
Is this the screen? Oh, hold on, because I don't know how that, I didn't touch it at all. So
There
where do
you
you
go.
want to go? Which screen?
that one right there. That's perfect.
Okay. It just moved by itself.
Yes. So just going over to another way of looking at it. If you were to now take this property and let's say rent it out. Renting is really good in the aspect of, having that long-term money security. I usually encourage Airbnbs. That usually makes a lot more money. We'll discuss that in a little minute, but I did this idea based on an Airbnb. So let's say you decided you wanted to Airbnb your property, okay? Now, if you're to Airbnb one and live in the other, instead of you having somebody inside of your, instead of you sharing, the property with someone else and you wanted to gain income from that, then you could say, okay, I'm going to have a potential income of $57,000. I can have gross operating income of $48,000, net operating income $20,000, and then your carrying costs are less. So you can live in one, instead of you paying that full amount to carry your unit, you're now paying a less money. So your carrying costs would have been $4,784. Now your carrying costs are $2,278. So supplementing your income, or offsetting, your income with using your Airbnb to generate income is also another way to get your home, to be able to get your home more affordable so that you're able to survive in this market.
Okay,
So here's the property that,
which one? Want next screen?
no, you can go to the next one.
Okay, let me know, please.
Okay, so here we're gonna get to the good stuff. So this part is where we discuss co-ownership a little bit further and how something like that would look for a group like, you know, maybe 4 owners. So let's say you have 4 investors. I'm going to break it down and just show you what your income would be on this property. So if you have a property and it is $1.150 million, right? Your carrying cost for this property is about $6,760. Okay, this property has 5 units, 5 residential units and 2 commercial units in it. So if you were to have your potential income, if you were to have it leased out long-term to a long-term as a long-term rental, you're looking at potential income of $104,000 on this property. Okay. If you were to, your gross would be usually, if you're going to have it as a Airbnb, your gross would be, you can gross it at about 100,000, 10616. Now operating income 78,959. Your expenses 21,657. Right? You're going to cash flow on this, so there's no carrying costs. All right. And your cash flow, if you leased it long-term, so you leased out all of the units, you're looking at around 19,494, give or take. Okay. Now, if you were to do a short-term rental, the laws are very similar in Toronto as it is here in Windsor. So a short-term rental, someone who is an owner should be living in that property as their primary residence. So how we broke this down is, instead of you're gaining income from all 5 residential units, you're going to be gaining income from 4 and possibly living in one of them. Well, at least one of the owners should be living in one. So now your potential income, you're looking at 187,000. And that's based on, we have one bedroom. I think there's 2 1-bedrooms. So your Airbnb per night, around like $100 per night for one of the rooms. Another 2 of the rooms is $115 per night. And a 3-bedroom, you're looking at $125 per night. Okay. So let's say you're gaining income through your Airbnb. Your gross operating income is $138,000. Your net operating income is around $90,000, and your expenses are going to be more than a long-term. The reason why your expenses are more than a long-term is because you now have to pay for your utilities, and you also have to pay for a co-host. You can choose to not pay for a co-host, and you'll pay a little less if you did that. So you're looking at your co-host fees would usually be around 20 to 30%, depending on if you're including your cleaning. You also have to consider that your Airbnb won't be rented full-time. It would be, it depends. It would range on what your occupancy is. I believe if you have a really good host, if you're a really good host, if your property is like prime, you're in a good location, in Windsor, you can expect to have somewhere around like an 85% occupancy rate, which is still pretty good. So I'll take out about 15% off of the gross operating income. So now your gross operating income is like 138,000. Okay. So you're looking at a cash flow now. If you did a short-term rental in this property, whether it's by yourself or with a group, you're looking at 30,679. So if you were to have, let's say you decided you wanted to own this with other people, could be your family, could be other people that you know who share similar interests and want to invest with you. In a property like this, I wouldn't really go more than 4 people. let's say 4 investors decided to get into a property like this. You put a down payment each of about 100,625. You would have to put in extra money for, your furniture, stuff like that, and your inventory if it is an Airbnb. If it's not an Airbnb, you wouldn't have to put any of that stuff in. You would just lease it out unfurnished. But we want to go with the highest best use, which would be to do the short-term rental with the Airbnb, because that produces the most cash flow. So now at this point, you'd be investing somewhere around 110,625. I allocated 10,000 because it's just a small apartment. I allocated $10,000. It's not the exact, but I just wanted to give you at least a close enough figure to what it would be for you to furnish one of the units, right? So I allocated each person to putting 110,000 in for this investment. Now each person who's investing in this property can say, okay, I would like to take a unit and let that be my Airbnb. Let that be my individual unit that I control or I manage, or you can just do it together as a group. Okay. So let's say now that you do a cash flow, you have a cash flow now for each person. If it is a long-term, you're looking at $4,873 for the year, and you're looking at $7,670 for a short-term rental for the year. So you're making around $7,000, which would be for the short-term per person. So if each person decides to go in, this is what your initial investment is, $110,000. You are now an owner. You actually got into the market. You do cash flow around $7,000 a year with a group of people, and you just let that sit there and generate. Now, this money is only your cash flow. This is not including your appreciation. Okay. Now, these numbers, you would give and take some money out of that, right? Because obviously some things come up. You never know what kind of extra costs might be incurred, but this is just a general idea. So the next one, we can go to the slide. Let's talk about, now we just talked about short-term versus long-term, and I wanted to discuss residential commercial investments. This is kind of going along with what you had posted, Jean, when they said, hey, you know what, a bunch of girls got a plaza and they invested together. I think in our community, we think the only way to gain income is just through buying houses, but what about buying commercial real estate? What about investing in your businesses? I go in a lot of our groups, I see a lot of people having their own hustle, their own business, their own things that they can make money off of. Why not take that idea and get some real estate, get some people to back you so that you're able to grow your business and get it up and running. I have a property here listed. I just wanted to show you what it looks like. Just like the other one before, which I actually didn't even get a chance to mention with the Airbnb, you're also making income from the bottom units that had commercial. So somebody can run their business at the bottom of those. You can buy a property that has half commercial, half residential. Like this property here is a car wash, but it comes with a duplex on it. So you can find creative ways to generate income. Now you can generate your income through the duplex. You can live in it. 2 people can own it. 1 person live in 1 unit, 1 person, and you run the business and you generate income from the car wash, or you can just rent out the duplex and generate income from there. So once again, it's the same concept, which I'll share with you guys. I'm sure Jean will be able to share this with you guys later so you can look at the numbers. Once again, if it's an initial investment, for one owner, you're looking at $346,000. But if you have 2 owners, you're looking at $173,478. Okay, so it's a lot more manageable if you're doing a larger investment, if you have multiple owners, and this way you can get into the market, you can generate income for yourself. My bright idea would be get into a business, get it up and running. Now you're selling the business. You can sell your business and you can sell the property. So now you've got your appreciation, you've got your cash flow from the rental unit, and you've gotten business up and running, made it successful through whatever idea you have, and you can sell that business. So a business is not just going to be the land value and the building value, you're also getting the value of the income and the resources and everything that comes with your business. It will have its own value. So this is another smart way in our community to generate income, is through buying and selling a business, buy the property, increase the profit, sell and repeat. Okay, so you to get in and you get the support you can, get in, get the business up and running and move on, keep it going. All right. And the good thing with the residential is if you can't afford the carrying cost of the mortgage, if you think this is high, living in that unit will help. It will help with the income, it will help with the expenses. Instead of you paying for your mortgage at another place, you live in there for a while, you make that sacrifice, you live in one of the units, just so that you can generate the income that you need and get it where it needs to go. And you don't have to be paying for your house or paying for your apartment or whatever it is and paying for a separate unit. So getting creative with how you, what type of property and what it has to offer is a smart way to go. So if we can, as a community, somehow find a way, I'm sure Lisa will be able to touch a little bit on the ideas of how we can purchase together, how people can purchase together in larger groups and what structure that would look like. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was us growing as a united community and what we're able to do. So in order to have a successful community, just like the other races and other people that are around us, is first we have to build wealth within our families. It starts at home. Okay, so if you start by getting into home ownership, whether it's by yourself, whether it's your family members, you join into it. Once you start having those resources, you're now able to move forward. The next thing is organizing communities that support our own. That is another step that's very important, because then you have people you can rely on. You have someone to go through. If I'm supporting you, you're supporting me, we can grow. But if we're all scattered all over the place and there's no cohesive, like there's nothing keeping us in one spot and focusing, then no one's really going to grow. Right. And then we do it one step at a time. Stop thinking that you should be looking for a get rich quick scheme. Stop thinking that this will happen overnight. It won't, but you have to start somewhere. So when I talked about investing in potential, I did want to bring up the subject, like I said, of Windsor. Windsor is a developing market. I did discuss this. I think I had a Zoom call last year sometime, so I touched on some of these subjects. Because Windsor is a developing market, it has 5 major commercial investments coming to town, which brings job opportunities. So that is a key indicator that the city is set and in the right position to see a significant and continue to have significant growth. There's the Stellantis battery plant coming, the mega hospital coming, the $12.5 million manufacturing facilities, the Gordie Howe Bridge, which is going to bring around 2,500 jobs, and the Amazon Fulfillment Center. And then those are like anchor corporations that are coming to town. But then when those companies come in, there would be other companies that now will service or will need to come into town just to support that business or to, grow or feed off of the clientele that's coming in as a result of those businesses. So I did discuss that, you would have access to, certain, airports and highways. And then you have the housing vacancy rate, which is this high demand for rentals right now. I just posted an article on it. The vacancy rate right now is 2%.
Wow.
The demand
That's
rental
low.
is so high, it's ridiculous. So you investing in this town, you're going to get a rental. You're going to get a renter. There's hardly any rentals on the market because there's such a big demand for rentals right now. So those are all ways that you can say, okay, if I invest in the city, I know I can get a renter. I know I can get people in here. So the average home price, like I said, is $616,642. And that shot up from 2019, about $280,000 from just 3 years ago. So almost 4 years ago. Yeah. So it went up $280,000 for a small town like this. That's a lot for the average price. So the top most affordable place to live in Ontario, like I said, is Windsor. Not too many cities in Ontario, their housing produces cash flow. It could be because it's hard to get renters in there or the price is just too high, but this city is still seeing properties that still produce cash flow. So investment properties is big here. A lot of investors are buying them up and I'm watching it happen. The city is completely getting an overhaul. You just have to be a smart investor and put your money into the right things and make the right decisions and do your due diligence. There's also something called business development grant program that they have out here. So if you started a business, let's say you decided to run a business here, the city will give you grant money every year. I think something like a little over $100,000 each year to support your business and grant money. So you can collect that. And a lot of people think, hey, you know what, another reason why I don't want to move outside of Toronto is because it's, you know, for us, you might be facing racism or there's not much people that look like you. Windsor is one of the most diverse cities. It is a huge immigration town because it is a border city. This border town is rooted in Black history from centuries. This is where a lot of the Underground Railroad ended here in this area. So we also have Detroit, Windsor interconnected lifestyles, which means a lot of people are used to sleeping here, going to work in Detroit. And we do know Detroit is very multicultural, has a lot of, Black residents there. So it's very relaxed. Then also, you have to understand that, like I said, a lot of the people stick together here. So you get a lot of church groups and different types of ethnicities. I have a tongue tied. Ethnicities here. So you're good to go when it comes to having a more diverse experience here. So moving to a city like this, you wouldn't really, struggle in that aspect. Okay, so those are just the main points that I wanted to discuss.
Mhm.
Think that we can look at a way for us to own property together, whether it's with your family or whether it's a group, and how that would look like. So I'm going to leave the floor to Lisa so she can talk about the legal aspects of it.
Okay, thank you so much, Nikki. That's great insight on moving to Windsor. When we take a look at the South Asian community, and what they've done in Brampton, I can take my hats off to them, and this sounds like a city that is waiting for something like that to be developed in the Black community. So I'm hoping that a lot of people will take the opportunity to, go down and take a look and see what is available for us. Now, when we look at some of the properties that you're showing us, maybe it would be a good idea to buy in the form of a corporation, right? Now, because we are just starting this initiative in our group, it is very challenging at this point to set up a new corporation and say we have like 60 people in that corporation. It's hard to get financing. I'll just be honest with you, right? It's a very challenging purchase. Banks will not finance a new corporation because there's no track record, right? Unfortunately, they will want a personal guarantee, and it is risky for those who do. They may not want to. So when it comes to the big purchases, it's optimal to buy in cash, right? And as one of the sisters mentioned in our Facebook group, there's 6,100 people. We put $200 a month, $2,400 in a year. That's $14 million, right? And for most people, $200 a month is not really a lot, right? It's something that can be done. So we must create a group that is willing to save or invest the cash needed for purchase, right? So at this time, I'd like to invite Lisa to talk to us about the basics of some corporate structure. So Lisa, you are on stage, beautiful.
Good evening, everyone. Nikki and Jean, you guys have done an amazing job of just setting out a lot of the opportunities that is out there for people to get in to the market, and highlighting how behind our community is in terms of utilizing the strategy of co-ownership in order to get into the market and to start creating generational wealth. So great job to the two of you guys. Jean, if you could just switch it to the next slide. So I'm a real estate lawyer in the GTA, and I advise clients pretty much all over the GTA. There's a number of different ways you can structure a co-ownership or a joint venture. One way is if you have a number of people, one or more people, not many people, 5 would be ideal. You could decide to do that in your personal names, in your personal capacity. The most common ownership structures when you're purchasing property in your own personal name is either holding that property in joint tenancy or tenants in common. So joint tenancy comes with what's called the right of survivorship. All the co-owners hold title to the property jointly with equal rights to enjoy the property, use the property during their lifetime. But once a co-owner dies, their right of ownership passes to the surviving joint tenants through the right of survivorship. That's not always the most advisable ownership structure when you're investing with individuals that you don't know, because obviously this is an investment, and your investment you want to ultimately pass on to your heirs and your family. So the most common when you're purchasing with other investors in your personal capacity would be tenants in common. Sorry, if you could just go back.
It's okay, sorry.
Yeah, which would be tenants in common. So tenants in common, all the co-owners of the property have equal or unequal shares of the property, and usually that's based off of contribution. The more you contribute, the higher your ownership share would be in the property. But despite the fact that you have a different share, everybody has equal rights to occupying the property, using the property. But it does not come with the right of survivorship. So when a co-owner passes away, their interest or their ownership interest in that property, it passes to the survivor, passes to their heirs. So there's advantages and disadvantages to this ownership. If you're purchasing with a group of family members, joint tenancy may make sense. It just really depends on the circumstances. There are benefits to taking it with a tenants in common, because it gives you the opportunity, each individual co-owner, the opportunity to leverage their interest of the property to help with their own financial goals. It also is a lot easier to maneuver and deal with your interest. You can dispose of it and sell it to a third party. You can mortgage just your interest in the property, and you can do that typically without having to get the consent of all of your other co-owners. But in a joint tenancy situation, there has to be a consensus. Everybody has to consent if the property is going to be sold, or a portion of the property is going to be sold, or if the property is going to be mortgaged or encumbered in some way. everybody has to agree. So there's definitely some differences between the two. And one of the biggest protections that you have to consider when you're purchasing property as in your personal name is the tax consequences that could flow from it in terms of whether it's your principal residence or you're using it as an investment property.
Call me later.
Sorry.
Put on that.
Okay, thank you. You also have to understand that if you're entering into this this structure of ownership, although you may own a distinct share or interest in the property, you are 100% personally liable for the entire mortgage. So if one co-owner falls through and they're not able to pay their share of the expenses and the mortgage, the other co-owners have to step up and pay for that co-owner share, because ultimately you assume personal liability. You enter into a mortgage jointly and severally, which means you all owe it, but you individually owe it. So if there's a default for any reason, the bank can go after the co-owner with the deepest pockets. And you also have to think about creditors. Everybody's financial situation is different. Their spending habits are different. And so if you purchase in personal names amongst a group of people and you're not familiar with what their spending habits are and they fall into debts that they don't pay, their creditors, there's exposure for creditors to get judgments and place liens on the property that then have to be dealt with and can affect the interest that all the other co-owners own. So this structure can be used, but it needs to be used wisely and should always be accompanied with a co-owners agreement or a joint venture agreement that sets out, that kind of lays everything out, how expenses are to be dealt with, who's responsible for management, what's the exit strategy if one co-owner no longer wants to be a part of the investment. There's also things to consider in terms of if one co-owner is married, should a divorce trigger them having to sell their interest to avoid the other co-owners being subject to their spouse. So there's a lot of considerations from different varying areas of the law that have to be considered when you're entering into these agreements. So having a co-ownership agreement or a joint venture agreement that's kind of sets out everything, what you contribute, what your entitlements are, what your exit strategy is. Having that all laid out in writing before you proceed is very important with this type of ownership structure. So Jean, if you could just move to the next one. So the other common structure, the ownership structure, is going the corporate route. So some individuals will come together and decide to form one corporation specifically for the purchase of the property. So it is not them owning the ownership, owning the property in their personal name, but rather it's the corporation and they own an interest in the corporation. So shares in the corporation as opposed to the actual property that's being purchased, because it's the corporation that would be the owner of that property. So when you go the corporate route, there's two different approaches that you can kind of take with that in terms of structuring the corporation. You have the first one is where every investor is named as a director and a shareholder of the corporation. And the shares that each investor has is again based off of their financial contribution to the investment. But the difficulty with this approach of having all of the investors named as a director and all of them named as a shareholder is that it can make there could be significant complications with respect to decision making. When you have too many chefs in the kitchen, not much gets accomplished. So if you have everybody who has control and you have to have everybody agree, it can be difficult to get to a common consensus. It can take much longer to get to an agreement. So sometimes there's just some practical difficulties with going this route of having everybody as a director. There's also more exposure, liability exposure when there's more directors, because then there's more people who have control and who can make decisions on behalf of the corporation. So yeah, and when you have more people who have the ability to make decisions on behalf of the corporation, then you have to watch closely, because everybody's responsible. Everybody owes a fiduciary obligation to act in the best interest of the shareholders. So oversight of what directors are doing can be difficult if you have a large number. In Ontario and in Canada, across Canada, there was really no limit to the number of directors or shareholders that a corporation can have. But again, there's just some practical considerations that you'll have to consider when thinking to go this route. So when we talk about the other option is having the corporation, but having a distinct number of directors. Choosing a number of directors that incorporate the business, and they are responsible for the management of the corporation. And then each investor then has their shares in the corporation based off of their contribution. So they have certain rights as shareholders. They're entitled to participate in the decision making, but they're not necessarily involved in the day-to-day management of the corporation, not involved in the day-to-day paying of the mortgages and just the practical parts of running a corporation and managing a investment property. Jean, if you could just switch to the next slide. So to give you guys an idea, if you do create a board of directors, the board of directors are individuals who are elected by the shareholders. So shareholders are the ones who make the decision in terms of who they're going to put in that management position. And again, they oversee the day-to-day operations and affairs of the corporation. The board of directors, once they've been appointed, they will typically appoint officers, which could be your treasurer, your secretary, your president, your vice president, the individuals who actually come up with strategies on how the corporation can, whether it's acquiring more properties or leveraging the one property that they do have. This is what the board of the officers are responsible for. They're responsible for taking care of the practical day-to-day, making sure the operating expenses are paid, making sure taxes are paid, making sure everything that needs to be done to manage the property or properties is being done on a day-to-day basis. So again, shareholders, they don't own the corporation. they own shares in the corporation. And so it creates certain rights within the corporation. They're entitled to vote, participate in the some of the decision making of the corporation, and it gives them rights to be paid dividends, which is a share of the profits that is earned on the property owned by the corporation. But not all corporations pay dividends, and in this type of situation where we're purchasing real estate, dividends may not be most appropriate, but again, depending on the structure and the goals and the goals and the objectives of the corporation, then it may be appropriate. Shareholders also would have the right to share in any of the remaining assets of the corporation if it is ever to be wound up. So if the property is ultimately sold and they're winding down that property based off of how many shares they own in the corporation, that's what they would ultimately receive once the property's been sold and the corporation wound up. So shareholders do have rights. It's just having a limited number of board of directors and officers can make for a much easier running of the corporation. Next slide, Jean.
Oh, this was the last slide.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so those are some of,
Yes.
I mean, and there's so many other factors that come into play into how you do things. Even in a corporate structure, it's important to have an agreement amongst everybody. So in this type of structure, instead of it being a co-owner agreement or a joint venture agreement, the akin to that would be a shareholders agreement. So that shareholders agreement would set out some of the same things that a joint ownership agreement would discuss. It would discuss, well, what would happen on the death of a shareholder? How can a shareholder sell their shares? Are they able to just sell it to a third party, or must they give a right of first refusal to existing shareholders? Yeah, so there's so many factors to consider. But these are the key ways that you can go about doing co-ownership amongst a group of people.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. That was very insightful. Okay, so I know we're sort of running out of time, and bear with me. We just have one more sister that would like to speak to you guys. Mara Clark is also a lawyer. She's a family lawyer. She's a part of our Facebook team as well. And she has an investment opportunity for a lakefront property, looking for investors. So because this group is interested in that opportunity, I thought I would ask her to share what she has to offer. Maybe there are people in this group that are interested. Mara, you're on stage.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity, Jean. And thank you for this forum and everybody who has contributed to having this information session tonight. I'll be very brief. We have a joint venture agreement, as Lisa discussed different types of agreements. So we are a joint venture of 5 partners. We invested in a investment property that's primarily for short-term rentals, so Airbnb, and with some investor use. So we each have some time that we can use the property. It is a lakefront property on Lake Ontario, within 2 hours of downtown Toronto. And we've done all of the work to, come up with the joint venture agreement, establish the short-term rental business, create all of the contacts, service providers, and things that are needed to run the business. But after about a year and a half, a couple of the investors have realized that it's not a hands-off investment, definitely needs to do continued work. And so they're looking to sell their interests. So the approximate buy-in, just so people can know if it's in the range or not, is about 100,000. I do have an investor prospectus. I'm not giving all of the details because obviously it's we don't want to share all of the intricate
course,
details
yes.
of the business, but I
Yes.
will drop my email address in the chat box. And if anybody's interested in learning more, we'd first have some initial discussions just to talk about the investment. And we're looking definitely for the right partners, not just for partners with money. As mentioned, it's not a hands-off business, and we each need to play different roles to ensure that it is cash flowing like we want it to. So that's about it. Thank you, Jean. Short and sweet.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being short and sweet. Now, you can also put that information in our Facebook group as well, right? I think you're a member, correct? Right, Mara?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I am. I muted.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll leave it here. We're not.
Okay.
I'm careful about how we are talking about it publicly.
Okay, I
Just
understand.
because,
Sure.
yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so at this point, I'm sure that you're wondering, where do we go from here, right? I talked about the 3 mortgage markets, the lenders, shared ownership, shared properties, buying outside of the GTA, out of the province, and even out of the country. And I've shown you all, regardless of, the money that you're making, how you can participate in buying real estate with even a smaller amount of money or, a lower income. So I hope that was insightful. So for those who are interested in the group purchase savings program that Chanel Cato introduced to us on the group, you can contact her at btinvestment@gmail.com. And I will put this email address on our Facebook group, in the real estate Facebook group. And what she's looking for is your name, contact information, and your skill set. What do you do for a living? Because she has to figure out who can do what once you get the group going, okay? And for those who are interested in the wonderful opportunities that is presented in Windsor with Nikki Llewellyn, please contact Nikki on our Facebook site, or you can go to her Facebook site, Multiplex Investors Network, right? And you can get in touch with her there if you have a group of people that are interested in buying. I think what she presented tonight on Windsor presents an opportunity of a lifetime. You want to get in when, you don't want to get into a city when things are getting bad. Right now, rent is so strong in every market in Canada, right? That it's the perfect time to look at buying rental properties. And of course, with myself, I'm available for any mortgage advice needed. I do offer advice twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays between 7 and 9 p.m. free of charge, whatever you want to ask. I do that, in my free time, no charge, but you have to make an appointment with me, okay? Because I do get busy sometimes. And last but not least, Lisa is available for mortgage closing services. And I've used the sister. She's very, very thorough, very good, okay? So at this point, I'd like to open the floor. I know it's kind of running late, but hey, the kids should be in bed already. And, we should be able to open the floor for questions. But before I go, I'd like to give a shout out to the people in our group, okay? Now, I'm a mortgage agent. I have a lot of experience, and a lot of people do come to me from time to time to ask me questions, but there are other mortgage brokers and agents in this group, such as Horace Dockery. I think there is Amoy Hughes, I think her name is, right? Now, guys, we are a group, we are a family. We should support each other. We can't just give the business to just one person. I don't want it all. You know, we have different lawyers, we have mortgage agents, we have and brokers, we have real estate agents, we have lawyers, we have all kinds of people in our group, and we need to support each other. It's very important. We want to make sure our money is circulated in our economy. It doesn't, right? Some other groups, the money goes around 6 times. Ours, I don't even know if it goes around once. So we really, really need to start supporting our people. You know, if I'm giving you a mortgage from TD, you know, so can Adrian in our group. He can give you a mortgage from TD as well. Now, remember, guys, our children are going to marry each other in the future, right? And everybody has a mortgage to pay. So let's try our best and support each other. Okay, so what questions do you have? Pierre, are you here to help me out? Let's take a look at the chat room.
Definitely. I saw one for Lisa. I don't know if this is if it's feasible. So besides joint ownership, joint venture, and the corporate structure, would you ever recommend inter vivos trust?
So that's a great question. Trust declarations are definitely something that I recommend quite frequently in different scenarios. Common times I would use a trust agreement is where you have a parent or a child going on to a mortgage for just for qualifying purposes. Then I would definitely, that's when I would recommend a trust agreement in that situation. Trusts can also be used in the same situation of purchasing property in your personal name with a number of co-owners. It's not always necessary for all of the co-owners to go on title and to be on the mortgage. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe the co-owner has the money to invest, but their credit isn't the greatest. So it's better to leave them off of title and the mortgage. So in those types of situations, yes, as part of the joint venture agreement or the co-ownership agreement, it would accompany a trust agreement that would clearly set out that a co-owner's interest is being held in trust. So yeah, there's a variety of different reasons that I would recommend that a trust be established and set up. And it just really depends on the circumstances around the co-owners.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
I know there's I know Mara was talking about the family law issues, especially for domestic contracts. I know Lisa touched upon it. Also, you know, potential creditor issues should there be a marriage breakup. The one spouse could potentially have access to the property. So I don't know if you want to maybe elaborate on that again.
Lisa, do you
Sure.
want to take that question?
Yeah, Mara, you can also jump in because you're the family law expert. But yeah, from a co-ownership standpoint, when one spouse is owning property with third parties, and there's a breakdown in the marriage, the fact that the spouse was not untitled does not negate the fact that they may have a claim or an interest in that property. That property still forms part of their family property, so to speak, and unless there's a domestic contract in place, but without it, it forms their family property, which is subject to equalization if they're married. So if a spouse has property and they need to pay an equalization payment to their spouse, the ownership interest that they have with third party co-owners could affect their ownership interest there. They may have no choice but to sell their interest in order to satisfy that equalization payment to their spouse. It in some cases as well, where the money's not there, sometimes it's a matter of the spouse being able to have entitlement to that actual asset in order to satisfy any equalization payment. So you have to consider that as well. Well, if you are married and you have a breakdown in your marriage, well, who is your spouse? Do I want to have a business relationship with your spouse? Can I work with your spouse? So those are some practical considerations that arise when you're purchasing property with co-owners who may be married, whose spouse is not also part of the investment. So,
And you can
Mara,
contract outside of that, right? So
Definitely.
for our joint venture, we contracted outside of that to ensure that breakdown in relationship does not result in an adverse impact to the investment. And all of the spouses signed an addendum agreement that supported our joint venture agreement. But just to sort of break down the term, equalization is basically the for married people. So under the Divorce Act, it is the court shifting assets. So looking at from your date of marriage to your date of separation, what was the growth in assets, and making sure that both parties are splitting those assets roughly equally. The exception to that is the matrimonial home. And I'm sharing this for everybody that's still online, and especially because I often have very progressive women come to me that have worked really hard, built their real estate portfolio, partnered later in life with somebody that is not, let's say, equally yoked. That partner moves into a home, one of their homes. That house becomes the matrimonial home. The matrimonial home is treated differently than all of their property. And the equalization goes from, well, it goes from the date of marriage to the date of separation if the person's not on title. But if you put them on title, the entire equity in the matrimonial home is equalized. So we need to talk about domestic contracts. If you're talking about property and investment, it's very important to protect yourself. There's ways to do it that doesn't need to be offensive to the partner that you're going to start your life with. But I see it when you don't do it, you come to me and ask me how come you have to pay this person X amount of dollars. And I say you should have come to me earlier. So please seek legal advice. If you do have property and you are going to get into a relationship, that's really important.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we get to home equity, I just wanted to maybe expand on, because you've talked about being legally married. Wouldn't there also be issues if you're in a common law relationship? Would you not have those potential same type of issues?
Mara,
So
do you want to take that?
Sure, I'll take this.
Okay.
So under common law, you don't have access to the Divorce Act. The Divorce Act is where equalization happens. However, in common law, you do have constructive trusts or unjust enrichment claims. And those are property claims that people that are unmarried can make through the law to be able to sort of equalize in the same way, but it's not the exact same. However, spousal support does not rest on marriage. So you can have a spousal support entitlement if you're common law, but the property entitlements are a little bit different. It's more difficult to make a constructive trust or unjust enrichment claim, but it's not impossible. But it is expensive. So if you're going to do something with a partner and you're common law, and you want to make sure that you're proceeding in a way that that property, that you would have rights to that property, like that's something that you need to discuss with a lawyer that represents only you, or privately get a private consultation from a family lawyer, not necessarily just your real estate lawyer, because while Lisa practices family and has some familiarity, there's lots of lawyers that don't. And so real estate will be their wheelhouse. They'll advise you from their perspective, but that actually doesn't carry, their perspective carries no weight in family law.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure of that, because a lot of people think that you know, common law spouses are not entitled to either spousal support and potentially access to the property. So thank you very much. I know there was a few people, Jean, wanted you to maybe expand on the HELOC and maybe using your home as a potential source of a down payment for future homes.
Okay. The home equity line of credit, which is offered by all the major charter banks and some monolines as well, is a very good resource to use when you need to buy a property. You're right. So what the home equity line of credit does is have cash available right at your fingertips. I usually suggest a home equity line of credit to people who are responsible with credit, because if you're not, they'll spend it, right? So for a person who is ready to buy a second property, those are usually people who know what their purpose is, and they won't, you know, be blowing their limit on you know, a home equity, just writing checks on their home equity line of credit. So I always encourage people from the age of, say, 50, they've paid down some of their debts and they're really looking at building wealth, right? To get a home equity line of credit, especially before they retire. Because once you retire, you can't qualify for much anymore, right? But once you have your home equity line of credit in place, it's good to have. And anyone who has a mortgage at RBC right now, I'm giving a plug to RBC. And if you have more than 20% equity in your home, you can, unless they've changed things since I retired from there, but you can change your mortgage into a home equity line of credit. They call it an in-kind transfer without qualifications, okay? Turn that into a home equity line of credit and you literally can write a check. Now, a lot of people don't really want home equity line of credits because they don't understand it, right? Now, the average home equity line of credit can be divided into 10 sections. So a lot of people say, no, I don't want to combine my mortgage with my car loan, or, you know, my credit debts that I just consolidated, like my loans and my line of credits and my credit card bills. Well, guess what? You can leave your mortgage separate in one section, right? Now, I always tell people a home equity line of credit is like a wallet with different compartments. One compartment can have your mortgage, right? And as a matter of fact, you can have up to 5 segments as a mortgage. You can have a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year, a 4 year, a 5 year in different, you know, say if you have a $500,000 mortgage balance, you can have 100,000 at 1 year, 100,000, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's how it works. Or you can keep your mortgage, say you have a mortgage balance of $350,000, you can keep that separate, and then you can put your car loan, which you're paying 14% on, move it into your home equity line of credit into a different section, right? Now, if you were to borrow money for a home equity line of credit to purchase a rental property, you can keep that separate. And the reason why you want to keep that separate is because when the interest is charged, you know exactly from the statement on that segment only how much your interest is for tax purposes. So a home equity line of credit is very, very useful for a lot of reasons. And one of the best purpose of it is to buy additional properties. If you need more information, call me.
Perfect, thank you. And also to build upon that, I've known recently, just watching CFTO, there's been some incidents of title fraud where people got their house stolen from them. Having a HELOC or having a home line on your house will protect you. It's not 100% foolproof, but thieves will shy away from going for someone that already has a first title on the property. So they love homes that are free and clear.
Yes.
And so having that HELOC, even if you never use it, would be another way in terms of, you know, minimizing the possibility of you losing your home.
Excellent
Thank you.
point. Excellent point. Okay.
Oh, and I've got a couple of how much a couple of questions left, and I think we could maybe wrap it up. I know there was a question for Nikki with regards to Windsor, which I know a great deal. It's talked about the flooding issues in Windsor and the need to use a qualified realtor such as Nikki. So I don't know if you would want to touch upon that, some of the potential issues in Windsor and the need to work with a qualified realtor.
Yes. So because Windsor has a lot of older homes, especially in the West End, there are certain areas you have to understand that Windsor is actually surrounded by water on 3 ends, right? And as a result of it being surrounded by water on those 3 ends, it does have an issue of flooding. The water comes from underground, and a lot of times it comes into the home. So you'll see in a lot of homes, you'll see sump pumps, and knowing which properties and making sure you're purchasing a property that either is outside of the danger zone where you would get a lot of flooding, or if you're inside that zone, making sure that you have an adequate a setup where you have waterproofing done in the exterior or interior of the home, a sump pump to get out the water, and all of that is in place. If not, you will definitely be having to you will have issues regarding flooding in your basement and in the lower part of your home. So that is definitely something to consider. There's a lot of other issues in Windsor. You have to understand, like I said, there are a lot of older homes. So if you're going to get something really cheap, like something 400,000, you can buy a house for 400,000. Even a rental property or a duplex, you can even get for like 500,000. But it may be an older home. And in older homes, just like anywhere, not just Windsor, when you're purchasing an older home, you do have a lot more things to consider than when you're purchasing like a new build. Like, what is behind those walls? Is there any mold in there? How is the electrical inside of that home? So those are all things you have to take a look at. And you might go from one budget and then open up and find out this budget is going to skyrocket because of something else. So those are things you should consider in any investor if you're looking to purchase a home. Then you want to also make sure that you're choosing a good location that will attract the right kind of tenants if you're doing investment properties. So you want to make sure that you understand that living closer to the university, that might attract more students. Those are the type of people that you want in your property. Students do provide guaranteed income. However, they do kind of trash your place. So some of those things you have to consider, especially if you're getting people who are coming in from other parts of the world and they're not used to, upkeeping these types of homes. Like, for instance, there was a circumstance where a guy was cleaning the floor. He just threw the water all over the hardwood floor and started mopping. They understand stuff like that. So those are things you got to look out for. Work orders. You can go on the city's website and get a lot of information. You can go on the city's website and kind of find out exactly, where the areas that are flooding the most. You can also find out information on a specific property if there's any outstanding work orders for that specific property. So you are better informed when you're. Another thing is sometimes getting a permit might take a little longer. I've had amazing stories, I've had horror stories, buying here in Windsor, but you do have to do your due diligence. You do have to take your time. Things don't just happen overnight in any property. You have to make sure you're making the right investment and allow your money to grow in the city, and make sure that you protect your investment, okay, by doing your homework on each property, because every property is different. So those are some of the things that you should consider, not even just here in Windsor, just in buying any home, but the water issue is definitely a thing that you do have to consider for this specific region.
Definitely. So speak to Nikki. I mean, that's a wealth of information right there. So if you're definitely interested in the Windsor area, I think Nikki's got her info probably in the chat room or in the Facebook group. Definitely please connect with her. Other question about using the life insurance, the CSV, the cash surrender value as a down payment. Yeah, you could definitely do that. So it can be used if you have either a whole life policy or a universal life policy that does provide the cash value. And you probably want to take it's one of the rare investments besides a TFSA and an RSP that you have the potential to take money out of your life insurance, the cash value of your life insurance tax-free. But you have to take it as a policy loan, and that could definitely be used as another source towards the down payment with regards to that.
Yes. And might I add, Pierre, in that case, when you're purchasing a home with monies that you're borrowing, if the money has not been lodged in an account for a certain period of time, the lender will want to know the source of the funds. And if you say that you're getting it from an insurance policy via a whole life or a universal life, the lender, depending on how experienced the underwriter is, will want disclosure as to how much you have to pay. That loan will cost you on a monthly basis, and that is going to be factored in on your liabilities. So, that's something that has to be considered as well.
No, definitely. And not every policy you have that ability. The good thing about numerous life insurance policy, whole life and universal life, is that there is no payment. It's basically it's capitalized, and it's going to reduce the potential death benefit. So some may give you the ability to repay if you want, or it may just reduce your potential death benefit. I think I've got one last question. Is there an advantage to buying inside a company or personal? I don't know who would like.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Is there an advantage to buying a property within the corporate structure versus personally?
You know what? It depends. There's tax consequences, definitely, that could be very beneficial. Again, liability considerations you have to think about, because again, when you're purchasing in your personal name with co-owners, if you're you're subject to their creditors. So it's a marriage you're entering into. You have to be very careful who you're entering. You have to know who you're entering it in with. When you're purchasing in a corporate structure, you're shielded from that, because again, the property is owned by the corporation. You just own an interest in the corporation, not the actual property. So if a shareholder has creditor issues, that doesn't personally, you don't attract that risk or liability, because it's separate. It's a separate entity from that individual. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's definitely benefits when you're doing a co-ownership to having it structured using it's a corporate structure as opposed to purchasing in your personal name. But there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Just
Okay.
Definitely.
depends on
Now,
circumstance.
I've only set up this meeting for 2 hours and we're really getting to that point right now. I didn't know it would last that long. So are there any more questions?
I think
Yeah.
that was it. I think that was the last
Yeah.
one.
I think the only thing I can add to this is when it comes to getting a mortgage in a corporation, it's not as easy. Trust me, guys. That's the only down. A lot of people think it's easy to get a mortgage as a corporation, and most lenders will not even finance that. So, keep that in mind. Make sure you get a pre-approval, because there's not too many pre-approvals in the commercial market. So make sure you speak to someone who's qualified to advise you on that matter. Okay. So tonight, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I'd like to thank Pierre for being the facilitator. I really thank you for that. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Nikki. Great job, everyone. And I'm hoping that we can do some more of these. And I'm sure the audience really, found this valuable tonight. So we can continue the conversation on our Facebook page where we do that very well. So I just want to say thank you and good night to everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jean.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night, everybody. See you in the group.
Night.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Wendy.
Good night.
Finally see what your face looks like, huh? Okay, so I'm gonna stop the sharing.